All right, so now that we're done with ingestion, we're going to move on to the ideation phase. This consists of two steps, synthesis and deep dive. So in the synthesis step, we're going to generate 3 startup candidates, and then we'll pick one of those and develop it into a full business model in the deep dive step. Now, for this step, let's try a little exercise to make it a bit more hands-on. I'm going to go over the outcome that we want to achieve, and then I'd like you to take a stab at drafting the prompt. Once you've typed in the prompt, I suggest comparing it with my own before you submit it, so you can make any necessary changes, or feel free to go ahead and submit it and iterate as needed. So here's what the synthesis step will look like. We're going to take our article insights that we generated in the previous step, and we're going to look at a rolling window of 4 days of article insights. And we're going to feed all of those article insights into the synthesis step. And in the synthesis step, we're going to develop this into 3 separate candidates. So a candidate represents one startup idea. To make it a bit more interesting, we define 3 different archetypes of ideas. The first archetype is the meta trend. So this represents major market shifts. As you might imagine right now, a lot of that is about AI. The second archetype is the friction point. So those are usually unsexy B2B problems. They're pain points. They're things that might not look super glamorous, but they're actually very important problems to solve, and people will likely pay a lot of money for those. And the third candidate is the rabbit hole. That's kind of my personal favorite. So these tend to be fascinating niches, all kinds of things that I never would have thought of. And we're going to represent each of these ideas with a candidate model. We'll use the usual base table pattern. I'm only showing the base class here. The table class just adds the usual database specific fields like ID and created at. So in the base class, there's a lot in here. That's because we're going with a very structured approach for representing our ideas. This will make it much easier for the subsequent deep dive step to take one of these candidates and develop it into a full business model. So in terms of fields, we're going to have the archetype. We're representing this with an enum. Then we have a theme. So that's kind of a quick theme of what this idea is about. We have a why now statement. So that's like, why is now the right time to invest in this? We'll assign a score that basically ranks the idea from 0 to 100 in terms of market viability. We'll have a one-liner that succinctly describes the idea. We will describe our target customer. We describe the problem that we're trying to solve. We describe the solution that we'll use at a high level to solve this problem. And finally, we will list the supporting article IDs. That's important as well. So later, when we generate the full newsletter, we can actually cite our sources and link to the articles that inspired this particular idea. So before you write the prompt, let me share a few more notes about the outcome that we want. First off, we should be able to do everything in a single prompt. So both the model and repository, but also the step itself. And we'll use plan mode again to iterate as needed. In addition to the candidate model, we'll need a new candidate repository with the usual create many function. We'll also need a new function in the existing article insight repository to fetch all the article insights for the past 4 days. I like to use midnight 3 days ago as a cutoff. That way, if our pipeline runs anytime today, say in a cron job, it can use the data that we generated just now, as well as all the data from the previous 3 days as inputs. Unlike triage and extraction, this will be a single LLM call, not a batch step. And the step should use the Gemini 2.5 Pro model because this step requires complex reasoning. I also recommend requesting that the system prompt emphasize the types of product you want. I'll show you my example shortly, but try taking a stab yourself. It's also good to emphasize that each candidate must include supporting article IDs, referencing actual article IDs from the input. And then we should add some brief guidance on what distinguishes each archetype. So again, meta trend, major market shift, friction point, unsexy B2B problem, rabbit hole, fascinating niche. So pause the video here, take a stab at typing in your prompt, and then come back to review.